I used to be somebody who fully rejected Calvinism and all 5 points of the tulip. But I've since come to realize that total depravity, unconditional election, and irresistible grace are Bible truths. And then, of course, limited atonement and perseverance of the saints are blatantly incorrect. 1 John 2:2 denies limited atonement. For those who are willing to just honestly look at that text and what the word world means in the concept of John's writings. And perseverance of the saints ultimately teaches work salvation, that you have to endure unto the end to be saved, versus, that's not what Matthew 24 is teaching. Not for salvation from hell. It's talking about salvation of your flesh, and it's enduring the tribulation period. And if you get to the end of it, Christ will deliver you from that hardship. But anyway, John chapter 6 is such a beautiful passage that teaches eternal security, but not only does it teach eternal security, it teaches the foundation of eternal security. And it's only with a Calvinistic mindset that you can even understand this. And we don't get that because we first insert Calvinistic ideas onto John chapter 6. What we can actually do is see John chapter 6, just taking it for what it plainly says and understand it. And it's clearly teaching Calvinistic type of ideas. So anyway, John 6:29, I think, is a great verse to sort of start the discussion with this. So Jesus answered and said unto them, This is the work of God, that ye believe on him whom he hath sent. So I can just love this verse for exactly how it's written, versus when I was not of this understanding, that verse just was a bit of a puzzle for me. It just didn't seem to make much sense. Versus now I completely understand it, where if you believe on Jesus Christ, it's because that's the work of God. It's not the work of man. It's the work of God. And that's really the key thing, is it's going to be either God-centered or man-centered. Is our salvation because we had the sovereign ability to put our faith in Christ, and then God just reacts to that? So, in other words, God doesn't himself decide who the elect are personally. He leaves that up to man, and then he embraces man for accepting him. But no, the scripture, John 6, is we're going to demonstrate that it's about what God does, not what man does. So with 6:29 out of the way, we're going to jump down to 6:35. So, and Jesus said unto them, I am the bread of life. He that cometh to me shall never hunger, and he that believeth on me shall never thirst. This is a really key verse because it explains what the coming to me or cometh to me is about. So, cometh to me is paralleled with he that believeth on me, just as never hunger is paralleled with never thirst. So the way you come to Jesus is by believing on him. So again, cometh to me, believeth on me. So if you don't accept that, I don't even know what you're really doing there at that point. You're just, not seeing something clearly. But I'll just say that for anybody who's kind of in the new IFB or been influenced by that movement. I believe Stephen Anderson has taught in John chapter 6 that the coming to me is actually believing on me. So if you need some other authority, so-called, you can reference that. But nevertheless, John 6:35 stands on its own, that the cometh to me is parallel with believeth on me. So if we're talking about somebody coming to Jesus in John chapter 6, we're talking about believing on him. So anyway, verse 36, but I said unto you that ye also have seen me and believe not. And then 37, all that the Father giveth me shall come to me, and him that cometh to me I will in no wise cast out. So here we have a clear order of events. First, the Father gives a select people to Jesus, the Son. And this particular group has to be not everybody in the world, but has to be a specific group of people, because it says of them, "In him that cometh to me, I will in no wise cast out." So, again, with our understanding that the coming to me is believing, again, think of this as, all that the Father giveth me shall believe on me, and him that believeth on me I will in no wise cast out. So I'm just using the Bible to explain the Bible here, what this is talking about. All that the Father gives to the Son will believe on him, and the person that believes on him I will in no wise cast out. So again, we have a clear order. First, the Father gives to the Son. Then that person who is given to the Son believes on the Son, and is therefore will not be cast out. So then verse 38, "For I came down from heaven not to do mine own will, but the will of him that sent me. And this is the Father's will which hath sent me, that of all which he hath given me I should lose nothing, but should raise it up again at the last day." For anybody who might believe in a concept of losing your salvation, this verse denies that. Christ is going to lose nothing. He's going to raise all that the Father has given him, raise them up again. They'll participate in the resurrection at the last day. "This is the Father's will which has sent me, that of all which he hath given me I should lose nothing, but should raise it up again at the last day." Jesus is going to accomplish the will of the Father. And then verse 40, "And this is the will of him that sent me, that every one which seeth the Son and believeth on him may have everlasting life, and I will raise him up at the last day." So the person who believes in Jesus Christ, he will be raised up at the last day. The Jews then murmured at him because he said, "I am the bread which came down from heaven." And they said, "Is not this Jesus, the son of Joseph, whose father and mother we know? How is it then that he saith, I came down from heaven?" Jesus therefore answered and said unto them, "Murmur not among yourselves. No man can come to me, except the Father which hath sent me draw him, and I will raise him up at the last day." Okay, so no man can believe on Jesus except the Father which has sent me draw him, and I will raise him up at the last day. Now, an Arminian objection at this point would be, okay, well, the coming is parallel with believing, so yes, no man can believe on Jesus except the Father draws him. But hang on, what they're missing is, "And I will raise him up at the last day." Or I should at least say some of them are missing this, because the person who is drawn is of necessity going to be raised up at the last day. That's not going to be every person. That's going to be a select, or I should say elect few, in comparison to all the population of the world who ever has or will exist in time. So, "No man can come to me except the Father which has sent me draw him, and I will raise him up at the last day." So the person who's drawn is of necessity going to be raised up at the last day. But if you sort of would say, well, Jesus talked about, "If I be lifted up from the earth, I'll draw all men unto me," from John chapter 12. And if the all men there is talking about all men just without exception, then, that would seem to be in conflict, if you will, with verse 44. But from my present understanding, I would submit to you that in the context of John chapter 6, this would be a different kind of drawing from John chapter 12. And to further prove that and just demonstrate that John 6:44's drawing is not necessarily the same as the kind of drawing in John 12, where it's dealing with all men, is from further on in the chapter. Because further on in John chapter 6 here, let's see. Yeah, so in 64, I guess we can look at. But there are some of you that believe not. For Jesus knew from the beginning who they were that believed not, and who should betray him. Of course, Judas is who he's primarily getting at. And he said, "Therefore said I unto you, that no man can come unto me, except it were given unto him of my Father." So he's referencing in verse 65, "Therefore said I unto you." So he's saying he said this before. And when you look at John chapter 6, he absolutely is talking about the drawing in 6:44, where no man can come to me except the Father which has sent me draw him, and I will raise him up at the last day. So, it's basically come to me in John 6:44. Come to me versus in 65, it's come unto me. So very, very, very close language there. So in 65, "Therefore said I unto you that no man can come unto me except it were given unto him of my Father." So therefore, this is teaching that no man can believe on Jesus except it were given unto him of my Father. That has to come first. So this is a passage in which there is just simply no way to get around what it is teaching. And then people would kind of probably bring up things about your will and all that. Well, again, first you have to be given by the Father to the Son to even be able to believe on him. So it's very, very explicit on that. But the central issue, the point of free will that people would have, because some might see these verses and still just be like, well, free will is still just somehow in there. But I would just submit to you that the will of man, if you want to say it like that, or I should probably put it as man's responsibility or response to, hearing the truth is to believe on him. So that's where the will's taking place. What's taking place before that is the giving of an elect people by the Father to the Son. That's independent of, man's will of choosing to believe in Jesus Christ. The will's coming at the believing man's will is coming in at that believing moment versus what came before that. That's God's will. So in other words, it's God's will first, then man's will, not the other way around. But furthermore, I guess the issue would then come down to what is really the nature of man, and does he have any capacity to believe? Well, the Apostle Paul really answers that. Like in Romans 1-3, for example, there's none that seeketh after God, there's none that understandeth, there's none that doeth good, no, not one. And if you're saying, oh yeah, but I can believe, well, you're just not adhering to what Romans 8 would say, that they're in the flesh cannot please God. It means it's impossible. Clearly, the Bible teaches that having faith is pleasing to God. They that are in the flesh cannot please God. And the Apostle Paul even said, who is to say, man, when he wrote the words that, in Romans 7, like, "O wretched man that I am, who should deliver me from the body of this death?" He's saying that in the present that he's a wretched man. And he even goes on to explain that in me that is in my flesh dwelleth no good thing. No good thing in your flesh. It has to be entirely God who has chosen to save you first, and then you believe. It's God's will, it's God's pleasure that comes first, and what he wants to have happen will happen. So God bless you all. Hope you can see this truth.